Sersky told the whole truth about Pokrovsk. Why is that shocking? All the details in our broadcast today. Stay with us. Washington is changing the rules of the game, and this could seriously affect Ukraine's territorial integrity and Crimea. How will these changes affect Europe, and why is the whole world watching the US's every move? A real battle is brewing in Europe for Lukoil's foreign assets. Strange, and companies are fighting for control of oil refineries and strategic infrastructure. Who will emerge victorious? And what does this mean for the global oil market? We'll find out right now. The FSB thwarted a daring attempt to steal a Russian fighter jet with a hypersonic missile. Who was behind the operation, and what does this mean for NATO and Russia? You'll learn all this and much more in our episode today. Don't switch channels and stay with us. The Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Oleksandr Sersky, stated that the situation in the Pokrovsk area has seriously deteriorated. According to him, Russian troops have already concentrated around 150,000 servicemen near the city. This marked a noticeable shift in the rhetoric of the Ukrainian command. Just the day before, the same Sersky was citing a completely different figure, around 50,000 Russian troops in that direction. The threefold difference led observers and analysts to say that the Commander-in-Chief's statement could be an attempt to explain in advance the possible loss of Pokrovsk, which Kyiv had long called one of its key strongholds. Sersky told the American publication The New York Post that Russia is trying to create a half-circle around Pokrovsk, advancing simultaneously from the north, south, and east. According to the Ukrainian commander, the enemy plans to cut off supply routes and thus force Ukrainian troops to leave the city. At the same time, Sersky insists that there is no official encirclement yet, although the scale of the concentrated Russian forces makes holding the city extremely difficult. Despite this, the Ukrainian command continues to assert that Pokrovsk will be defended. Earlier, Sersky assured that he had several operational decisions and mentioned plans codenamed B and V. This was meant to demonstrate readiness for any possible developments. However, after the data on the size of the Russian group was updated, the tone of the reports became noticeably more restrained. Now, the Commander-in-Chief is emphasizing uncertainty about whether the settlement can be held. Against the backdrop of official statements, videos have appeared in the information space, published by Telegram channels and military bloggers. The footage shows the breakthrough of the defense and the entry of large Russian forces into Pokrovsk. Russia's goal is to encircle Pokrovsk and neighboring cities from the north, south, and east. They're cutting off supply routes in its final attempt to capture the entire Donetsk region. It's a really difficult task to keep Pokrovsk under Ukrainian control. Constant fighting and shooting continue. The enemy is constantly making rapid maneuvers. In fact, the combination of growing pressure on the front lines and information attempts to explain what is happening creates the impression that the fate of Pokrovsk could become one of the key episodes of the current campaign. The Ukrainian command has to simultaneously conduct military operations and prepare public opinion for the possibility that the city might be abandoned. The administration of President Donald Trump is seeking a review of the annual United Nations resolution on Ukraine. This was an unexpected shift in Washington's foreign policy. According to the Cave Post publication, this was reported by two diplomatic sources familiar with the progress of internal discussions within the international organization. According to sources, the American delegation is demanding the removal of wording from the document that confirms Ukraine's territorial integrity as well as wording that condemns the annexation of Crimea and other regions by Russia. Previously, this position remained unchanged and was considered one of the fundamental components of the United States' policy regarding the Ukrainian crisis. At Washington's insistence, it is proposed to change not only the content but also the approach to the resolution itself. The American side proposes to revise the document, make it more neutral, and change the title, removing any mention of territorial integrity and aggression. This step is a radical departure from the previous line, which, since 2014, has consistently supported Ukraine and condemned Russia's actions. Diplomatic circles note that such a shift in focus could affect the balance of votes in the United Nations and lead to a change in the international perception of the conflict. European diplomats are expressing concern and consider the initiative a worrying sign of a possible U.S. departure from previous commitments. One European envoy noted that Washington stops defending Kyiv's key interests at a critical moment. According to diplomats, if the American delegation continues to insist on this version of the resolution, it could complicate the coordination of positions within the Western Allies bloc and cast doubt on further unity on the Ukrainian issue, according to a statement from Moscow. Russia's Federal Security Service prevented an attempt by Ukrainian military intelligence to hijack a Russian MiG-31 fighter jet equipped with a Kinzhal hypersonic missile. According to the FSB press service, the operation was carefully planned to provoke a response against the largest NATO airbase in Southeast Europe. The plane was planned to be directed towards the base's location in the Constanța province of Romania, where it could have been shot down by Allied air defense systems in the autumn of 2024. We received information about attempts by representatives of the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine to recruit the crew of a Russian MiG-31 fighter. For these purposes, the Special Service simultaneously contacted both the ship's pilot commander and the navigator pilot and organized their recruitment study. The FSB also reported that the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, with the support of British curators, was responsible for organizing the operation. Ukrainian agents attempted to recruit Russian pilots, offering them $3 million for hijacking an aircraft. The department emphasized that timely intervention prevented an operation and avoided potential international escalation. The Kinzhal hypersonic missile is an air-launched variant of the Iskander missile system fighter bombers. Equipped with such missiles have been on combat duty since the end of 2017 and are capable of hitting targets at significant distances at high speed. Independent experts note that the combination of hypersonic missiles with fighter jets increases the strategic significance of these weapons and makes them critically important for ensuring the country's security. NATO and European Union authorities have not yet issued official comments on the situation. However, sources report increased vigilance at air bases in the region. A battle has erupted in Europe for the foreign assets of the Russian oil company, Oil Bloomberg reports. According to independent experts, the situation in the oil and refining market is complicated by sanctions and restrictions imposed by a number of Western countries against Russia. A number of European countries have already approached the American authorities with a request to issue licenses for the use of oil refineries. Previously, these factories were controlled by a Russian company. Independent analysts note that the struggle for Lukoil's assets goes beyond purely commercial interests. According to expert Richard Bronze, the conflict is not only related to economic factors, but also to geopolitical pressure and the need to ensure the energy security of European countries. He emphasized that despite the presence of oil reserves in global markets, competition for the Russian company's foreign assets is becoming increasingly fierce as many countries are seeking to secure strategic facilities and infrastructure. It was previously reported that GNV had offered to acquire a portion of Elcoin Oil's assets. However, this proposal was rejected. Thus, experts and analysts state that Europe is facing a complex situation where issues of energy security, international politics, and corporate interests intersect. The struggle for Lukoil's assets is just one element of a broader picture in which strategic decisions are made against the backdrop of sanctions, market instability, and increasing pressure from various states and organizations. Friends, what do you think about all this news? Subscribe to the channel and leave your opinion. I would be happy to get acquainted with him. Share the video on your social media. Thank you all for watching. Wishing you all the best and peace.